of the map, but they're so tiny we can't really see them. So do you have the bigger one? Sorry.
Yes, we have, and they do have one as well. Here's a large copy. Oh, here's two.
No, not hold that. Thank you. All right.
You ready? My name is Peter Saliba. I'm the head of school up at Tilton School. And when we originally came to the planning board, I guess it was a year ago. Yeah, it was a year ago now. We talked about getting the turf field approved. And at the time, we talked about what was going to go on the field, and we didn't have enough money to do anything other than just put the turf field in place. And then over the course of the winter, a group of parents and some other donors had a real interest in putting some athletic field lighting on the field. And so we are here tonight to talk about the potential for putting athletic lighting on our field. Athletic lighting is permissible in the village residence area. However, there was a height restriction of 35 feet, and we went before the variance, the ZBA, to get a variance to raise the height of the lights so we could actually reduce the spillage onto the abutting property, about the abutters, the property of the abutters. And so that variance was granted, and so we're in front of you to talk about the difference in what we submitted a year ago. At the initial meeting, we actually talked about lighting as a possibility in the future. I just didn't predict the generosity of our donors. This has been a very exciting project for the school. It's generated a lot of momentum in a lot of different areas. And so I was pleasantly surprised to have this meeting only a year after being here. So I do have two representatives with me. I have Fred Heath, who's our Director of Facilities, and I have Nathan Collins, who is the contractor and also the engineer for the project.
All right. Thank you very much. Does anyone on the planning board have any questions of Peter at this time? All right. I think some were here earlier and some weren't. So if you would make your presentation,
sure.
Really appreciate it.
Again, for the record, my name is Nathan Collins. I am a project manager with RAD Sports. We're a general contractor out of Rockland, Mass. I'm also the engineer of record for this particular project. I handled the design and permitting originally in front of the planning board. As Peter had noted, we submitted a revised site plan application, specifically Plan SP3, which talked about the layout and materials of the proposed project. What this plan revision included was the depiction of 4 70-foot tall Musco athletic field light poles. All of the light poles, as they're located, are within the setback requirements of the village residential district. The one limiting factor we had was the height associated. Which again, as Peter had noted, we were in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals and received a variance for that height restriction. We also submitted with our application an illumination plan that showed the anticipated light level readings based on the technologies that we're proposing and a 70-foot pole height. I did submit a revised plan to the Zoning Board of Appeals associated with the fact that if you look at the plan on the southwest side, the particular pole that's in close proximity to the butters along Prospect Street, there's also a retaining wall that was permitted originally that has in that location a height of approximately 12 to 13 feet, which actually modified the spillage based on that kind of 3D analyzation. And that was submitted. I don't know if there's extra copies. If not, I can certainly get members of the board a copy of that plan. But basically what it did is it had light level readings directly at the property line of approximately 4-foot candles, and as you cross the street into the abutting property's light levels at the .1 range, which again in the industry is associated roughly with the light illumination of a full moon on a typical evening. As noted also, we are proposing 3 trees along the street line. Those were part of the original submission. That has not changed. However, there was discussion about possibly putting a condition in terms of the type of trees along that property line, which the school has no opposition to in terms of making them evergreen versus just a flowering tree.
Yes, question. Those 3 trees, where in particular on the property would you intend to plant those?
I think this plan.
I think they're where your hand, I think.
That's Prospect Street.
Yes,
Prospect?
right along Prospect Street.
Right. Not along the road.
Correct. Yeah. Right now, from the property line to where that wall starts is approximately 20 feet. I think that the setback regulation is a 20-foot side setback. So there's within that area we're going to do street plantings, and it's also going to be hydro-seeded as part of the current construction project. So all new bloom and seed. So again, just to emphasize, the lights as proposed now with the variance granted all fall within the bylaws, at least as I've interpreted them, associated with the town of Tilton. Outdoor athletic field lighting is allowed in the village residential district. The school submitted a usage plan that also falls within the guidelines noted. They're actually more restrictive than the current bylaws read. I think based on the current bylaws, you're allowed to have the lights on until 11 o'clock at night, and I don't believe that's the intent of Tilton School based on the MOU or the lighting plan that they submitted.
And I'm not sure you can answer this question, but one of the comments that came up was that you intend to use it, allow other schools to use it, or other groups within Tilton. Do you have any idea what those are and how frequently they would be using it?
So currently we make our facilities available to the town of Tilton, also the town of Northfield. So our ice rink, we donate time and we see a consistent use. We see a use consistent with how we've handled our other facilities. So I think during the winter, on 4 or 5 Sundays, we make the rink available to the local community. We have envisioned, having a 1 or 2 night games on a Friday night for either Winnisquam or Franklin. I think the history of Tilton has been working with the neighbors and being part of the community. I will say that we do not intend or have a vision of renting that facility out on a regular basis every night of the week, because that would be disruptive to our operations as a school. So I think what I said in the memorandum of understanding is that our use would be consistent with our previous use.
Anyone on the planning board have any questions, concerns?
What are the specifications of these lights?
In terms of, I guess,
Are they shielded, downcast?
they
I mean,
are.
You've got a variance that allows you to have lights at 70 foot high, but
Mhm.
that doesn't give you a variance from the ordinance.
They are,
So-
I submitted to the zoning board copies of the fixtures. They are outdoor athletic field lighting, which again is an allowable use. 100% cutoff fixtures do not exist. Musco systems have the closest fixtures to fully shielded cutoff fixtures that are available on the market. But they are
Page
down,
18 of our
downcast lights.
ordinance, number C, any light shining onto an adjacent property or street which results in light trespass, nuisance glare, or disabling glare shall not be permitted. these going to, this type of light going to prevent that from happening?
Yes.
But yet you talked about properties, that would be like the full moon.
I guess I would ask you, I would ask you to define, what was the word you used, light trespass or excessive trespass?
Any light shining onto an adjacent property or street which results in light trespass, nuisance glare, or disabling glare should not be permitted. And I would suspect that that would be determined by the residents of the property owner, whether it was a nuisance or not.
Right, I guess we have given this village outline in regards to what light meter reads are, and those surely don't reflect nuisance in the light meter classification. So
What is this village outline?
that's the.
I know you presented it to the zoning board, but
Right.
unfortunately, it's a do-over.
Well, there's this that was in your, sorry,
We submitted it.
if I can maybe help.
I haven't
There was
turned
this
my
that was in the
computer.
application, but then there was also another document that was just produced and it was presented earlier. at the
Yeah,
zoning
I
board
handed
meeting.
out all the copies I had. I don't know if they left any
So the zoning
records.
board left with them?
No, they left me, they tried to leave me with everything. Oh, this is it, right?
Correct.
Okay, so here was, this is just hot off the press.
Along Prospect Street due to the wall, as I had noted.
Yeah, the benefit of the wall helped reduce that.
Some copies, I think those are all set.
What is the latest you intend to have games? I know our ordinance says up to 11 or 11:30 at night, but there is also a sentence in here, the town of Tilton reserves the right to further restrict outdoor lighting, including but not limited to searchlights for special events, courts, lighting, blah, 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 and level illumination when it is deemed to be in the best interest of the public. So even though this ordinance says 11:30, that would be a maximum time, we could impose an earlier time. So what would be the latest you think a game would be? I think you talked about 9, 8-ish, 9
So
o'clock-ish.
I believe in your materials, we have a memorandum of understanding which we discussed as a school and also with our neighbors. And generally, oh, actually, I have a copy. And we talked about a maximum time of 10 p.m. We said that we do not plan to use the field on a regular basis from December through March, but there may be 2 or 3 times during this period where lights might be on until 11 p.m. And I believe, do you guys have a copy of this in your packets? Okay. So
If anyone needs one, we've got copies here.
generally, we anticipate the lights being used mostly in those shoulder seasons after daylight savings, when lighting becomes a factor at 4:30 in the afternoon, and we have to cut our practices. There's a 2-week time period where it becomes pretty restrictive. Sometimes our teams make playoffs, so we might go a week longer, depending on the practice schedules. And again, in the spring, we would have a pattern that was pretty consistent with what was in the fall, except it would happen in the earlier part of the spring rather than the later part of the spring.
What would you be doing in the winter, December through March? Doesn't football end before then?
Yeah, I have no idea what I'd be doing there. I just put that in because I've never had a lighted turf field before. I mean, there's been some talk of doing a winter ultimate frisbee match.
Now, Peter, don't get carried away because you get picked for the first time.
But I mean, we tried to work within what we feel would be a reasonable use and also minimize the impact on our abutters. I mean, we try really hard to work within those pieces.
So during the week, 7:30 would be the latest on Monday, 9 o'clock would be the latest on Wednesday, and Fridays it would be 10 p.m.
I think what the draft memorandum says, that Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, 7:30 p.m. Wednesday would not be used on a regular basis, but we might have an evening game that might go till 9 p.m. And then on Friday and Saturday night, games they're possible, but the lights would be off by 10 p.m. on those days. Even on a Friday night, they have to get to bed because they have classes on Saturday.
All right, any other comments?
Could I make one more adjustment,
Yes.
or one more statement? There is a last line in the lighting memorandum which says there might be some situations where we might need to go outside of these guidelines up till 11 p.m. And if that was the case, we would notify the neighbors as far in advance as possible. So, again, I can't anticipate every single use in those situations, but we would keep the communication lines open.
Well, they cannot be on past, no matter what the circumstances, past 11:30.
Yep. But I was thinking about outside of these guidelines.
Oh, your own guidelines.
Yes.
Oh,
Well, I was thinking of setting them until 10.
Oh, till 10.
A question though further beyond that. One of the lights on the lower part of the field is very next to the parking lot, where you have the, what are they, 20 feet? And those are downcast, correct?
That's correct. Those
1,
are,
2, 3, 4, it looks like there's 6 of them. And then you have some along the concrete sidewalk, one extending, 2 of them extending beyond the parking lot to the east towards School Street. Is there any, and I don't know anything about lights, I'm still using candles or kerosene lanterns, for God's sake, but is there any cumulative effect where those 70-foot light poles, that light meets up with the 20-foot light poles and multiplies the effect? As if they're, in other words, if the 70-foot poles were standing alone without those 20-foot poles, would the 20-foot poles add to their spread?
they were not. No.
I have no idea what this is telling me.
now the total effect, because the field is down,
Mhm.
the total effect is not going to be the same as if the 70 feet started at street level, is that correct?
I think what you're asking, if this pole was closer to the street and on top of that wall, would the off-site spill be better on the neighbors?
That's what I'm asking.
No, because we actually achieve additional glare control by placing that light underneath that wall, because you have that barrier. As I tried to explain, when you deal with athletic field lighting, if your pole's here, it shoots down, and where you get your spillage is it bounces back up, and that's where you get your glare and your spillage. By having a vertical plane on that side, as the lights across the street hit this, or across the field, sorry, hit the field and bounce, you actually have a little more protection, particularly on that abutter side, because of that segmental block wall that was installed. I'm not going to claim I did it on purpose, but it helps.
Okay. Thank you.
That's actually why we resubmitted that plan along that property line. Because the original plan that's submitted, what the lighting manufacturer does is they base everything off of a 2D, the computer just looks at it as a flat, the entire area is flat.
And where in Laconia did you say these were recently installed, this kind of, let's go by?
Laconia High School.
Okay.
Are any of these poles, and I'm thinking of the one on the southwest corner closest to Prospect Street,
Mm-hmm.
are any of these 70-foot poles within a distance that if they were blown over. Did I see someplace they're good for up to a 90-mile-an-hour wind?
Yes, you did.
You're right.
Okay, if they were blown over, would they be in danger of falling on a structure, somebody's home, garage?
Well, in that case, against that wall, the wall would protect it in that case for the property owners.
I guess it would
The
depend on.
the
if it
answer
was
to your, the answer to your question is there's no house within 70 feet of that pole.
Thank you.
But there is Pillsbury Street.
And that was my next question.
You know, that's Daniel Drive that comes around here, I think.
Yeah, they extended it and made it Prospect Street, but it is. it's
Oh, on the
Stevens
southwest
Road.
corner.
What about on Pillsbury?
Talking about the southern border?
Yeah.
No, there's 70 feet from
Or
the
actually, let's
street.
make it easier, any of
I
those
think it's
poles
more than 70
within.
feet.
None of the poles, if they were to fall, would fall on any type of structure.
Do you know how close the closest structure is?
The closest structure would be the properties, I guess there's a barn, and that gentleman left with a scale, but
So the barn is further away from that pole than 70 feet. I think it's going to be
Yes.
the property in the southwest corner, directly across the street, and we established that was 130
30 feet approximately.
feet.
What about on hazy days, cloudy days? It always seems like light pollution is worse on those types of days. Hazy days, you know, when you have,
Halo effect.
I mean, you come down 93 looking at, you know, looking at Tilton. It's like,
Yeah, I mean,
whoa,
it's,
how's that going to affect the neighbors?
sure, it's hard, I mean, it's hard to explain, when it comes to light bylaws, obviously if you look up at a light pole, they're bright. If you look up at the sun, it hurts your eyes. What we have to do as engineers and designers is abide by the bylaws that we're given. So 99% of all lighting bylaws are associated with light level readings at the ground. Because that's where the design parameters come from. I believe it's the New Mexico Dark Sky Initiative. So there's been many times where I've sat in planning board meetings where a neighbor says, when I look up at the light, it's bright. Outside of smacking her upside the head and saying, "Durr." I can't tell you, you know, if you drive by, will you be able to look up and look at the lights? Sure. Again, I don't know if that answers your question. It won't impact the light levels on the ground that we're required to meet as designers and engineers. I guess that's the best way I can answer that question.
Which I think would be our concern, is the light level illuminations on the ground, not if somebody goes and looks like that.
No,
Yeah,
I'm talking in general, when you have a low cloud deck or something, that light is going to reflect off the field and go into space.
Magnifies it.
It seems that when you have low level clouds, it's going to magnify that away from the field.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I haven't taken light level readings on a field or in the sky in a low level cloud. I can't speak to that. Certainly, if you'd like documentation from Musco that may have done studies on that, I could try to get that for you.
I would see that as being an issue at the further away you get, not necessarily at the field with the adjacent.
So I'm thinking of
Homes
people
there.
that live on this side of the street, that there's going to be, on a cloudy day or rainy day, it's going to be, you know, I mean, you see it wherever you go, there's, you know, the light can't reflect in the space because there's clouds and stuff like that, so.
It's raining, we're not gonna have a day.
It's a turf field, doesn't
A
it?
turf field.
Turf field will.
But I'm also thinking in
Still
terms
right
of, if you go by, if you're walking beside Tanger, that effect is not, it's not the effect, it's when you're driving on 93 and you look down and you see that. That's when that halo effect is very obvious, not when you're driving by it or walking by it or living by it. At least that's not the way I see it, and I don't think that that's the busy of it either, so.
I'm thinking out loud, so.
All right, any other questions, concerns, comments on the part of the planning board?
I'm gonna go, are these your land numbers here?
Yes.
That we just got today? What caused them to change from the numbers we already got?
I had called Musco and asked them, so given the fact that the bases of these light poles are 13 feet below that actual field grade, and you have that wall, will that impact? And they said, well, yes. And they resubmitted along that property line where that retaining wall is. So that's why it actually helps that we have that retaining wall along that property line side.
Yeah, because some like go 1.5 to down to 0.8.
Mm-hmm. It drops off quickly. And I wasn't able to bring the photo with me, but you know, if you go on the Musco website, they have very telling photos of the technology associated with their light controls. And the fact that you get 50 feet from these poles and it's as dark as if there's no light on it. They take pride in it, and they should. They spend a lot of money and do a lot of research to make their system the best. And the school's paying for it.
All right, if there are no other comments or questions from the planning board, I'll open it up to the public.
How many lights are they gonna be on the field, like, you know, installed where and location? And
There's 4 poles total. I tried to highlight them here. So
Okay.
generally, if you were to gauge it based on a football field, here's your midfield. This would be approximately the 25 or 30 yard line.
Right.
So there'll be a pole on each sideline and a pole on each sideline. So 4 total poles. And we were able to achieve that by the variance that was granted. By sticking to a 35-foot height, we would have probably had to put 4 poles per side to get the coverage, the adequate coverage we needed for
Field
playability. Yeah.
And then they'll be pointed down on the angle?
Correct.
In different points?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when they get installed, they're all delivered. The poles themselves are steel, and they actually slide down onto a concrete footing.
Okay.
It's a drilled shaft, and then they're all erected in place. So this particular pole, I believe off the top of my head, there's 13 fixtures on each pole. They get assembled all in place and they just get anchored. It should take a day.
Use a picture of the fixture if you want to see it.
My concern is just the time that, you know, agree upon, that, you know, these guidelines, whatever we talked about before. And like, I live right directly where you're gonna plant those trees are gonna be.
Sure.
So it affects, you know, us here as well.
Mhm.
I'm just curious to find out the particulars about it.
Yep. And as I had noted in the zoning board hearing, Musco has a proprietary system called Musco Control Link. So the actual lights themselves are controlled and monitored wirelessly 24/7. So the athletic director or whoever is going to be responsible for maintaining the schedule, it's all preset. They can set it a month ahead, they can set it 6 months ahead. When they come on quick, it's not like the old lights where it takes
Warm up.
45 minutes for them to warm up, and when they shut off, they're off.
Any other from the audience? Yes, Lloyd.
Headmaster Peter had talked about the memorandum of understanding on the lighting, and that perhaps maybe, if there is a special event, that he would communicate with the abutters. I would ask the planning board to make that, consider making it a criteria that also the town of Tilton be notified, Selectman's office, because often when people are not notified, the first phone call is to the town of Tilton, what's going on? So we could, you know, probably help diminish some of the issues there. The other question I had is this light here and the downcast, how will it affect this house? Because this house is much, much lower than the light here. It doesn't have a retaining wall.
The vegetation that is maintained along this, what's approximately 100 feet, would result in that house having zero impact or zero spillage on their lot.
My next question is, when it's wireless, do you have the ability to increase the lighting or dim the lighting? It's just on or off?
No, correct, it's on or off.
Okay.
These fixtures, they do make, you can buy systems that have different foot candle levels. You know, you can have a practice level and a game level. They didn't, they're going with what's basically the minimum foot candle level that you can have for a safe playing event, which is on the field of play, 50 foot candles.
Is there a noise associated with these lights at all, a hum or anything that would be a nuisance at all?
Not that I've heard. It's never been an issue or a complaint. It's certainly not the first field we've lit. But I don't.
He's on, to answer the question, look, we talk about the soft starts and they ramp up.
Yeah.
That's the old
They-
technology we
they're
don't
right.
have, that's not incorporated in this word, it just fires off. You don't have the ramp up, if you call it.
Yeah.
I'd like to point out two things in the zoning ordinance too, because I think this is important in view of the discussion that we've had. It says all events shall be scheduled so that all activity is complete before or as near to 11 p.m. as practical. Under no circumstance shall any illumination of the playing field, court, or track be permitted after 11:30 p.m. Listen to this, except to conclude a scheduled event that was in progress before 11 p.m. and circumstances prevented conclusion by 11 p.m. So that's right in our zoning ordinance. So if you were in the middle, I mean,
If it goes into overtime?
if it goes into overtime or whatever, I want to make sure that we're all in agreement that you don't have to call the town of Tilton and say, my goodness, we're not through with the game yet, we're going to go 10 minutes over. I don't think we're asking that because our ordinance it already covers that pretty well. Okay? And the other thing, in the ordinance, it also says the town of Tilton reserves the right to further restrict outdoor lighting, including but not limited to searchlights. It goes on and on. It says, when it is deemed to be in the best interest of the public and in keeping with the stated purpose of this chapter. So I think that if there is a problem, I interpret this to say if there is a problem with the illumination or whatever, then we can stop the lighting of the field at that time until some adjustments are made with your vendor.
The deciduous trees that you're gonna plant that are gonna block the lights, how tall are they gonna be when you plant them?
They're called out by caliper. So when you do landscaping, I think those are proposed at 2.5 to 3 inch calipers. So I would guess those are going to be roughly 10 feet.
What type of tree is that?
Delivered to the site.
Deciduous.
Well, it's deciduous.
Old maple, birch.
Right, it's deciduous. However, during the zoning board meeting, they did mention about requiring them to be evergreen type trees, and the school noted that they had no opposition towards that condition.
But still, how many years is it gonna take them to grow to be tall enough to block that light? At 10 feet, they're not gonna block 70-foot light poles.
Again, what we're showing here is not based on trees being in place to block, but
You just said that that house down in the corner, that those deciduous trees would help block the light to that property.
they will, and they'll make the conditions that we're proposing even better, which,
And how many years will it take? At 10 foot tall, you have to admit, they're not gonna block that light.
I guess the house you're referring to down there in the corner is, actually, it's outside of this whole concern of the irritated light. We
I
have,
don't know, it looks pretty close.
well, actually, it does, if you look at the light pattern, it doesn't even touch it up there, actually. But
I'm just
the-
commenting on what he stated, and that is
Yeah.
what you stated, that the deciduous
Well,
trees
let me
would block the light.
let me
So,
rephrase what I said then.
Thank you.
What we've submitted, in our opinion, meets the best interest in the bylaws of the town of Tilton. What I should have said is, those trees, over time, will only improve on what we've submitted.
Thank you.
Are there any more comments from public? I'll entertain a motion.
I think we should consider making a condition. And as you just read, on page 22.4.5, that we could make further restrictions on this.
Yes, I think.
And I would suggest that we require the lights to be off at 10 p.m. and then to change those figures in that from 11 to 10. And the latest is 10:30, football game running overtime, because that's just scheduling. And then I think that we should have language in there that requires them to.
Well, that would require our changing our zoning ordinance then, because the zoning ordinance,
No, you just read it. General standards and, no, I just switched the page again.
no, I read the page 19.
Page 20.
I know,
Town
but
of
I read
Tilton.
on 19 that all events scheduled so that they're completed. And then I read that we reserve the right to further restrict it.
That's right. So reserving that right to further restrict it, I would suggest that under K, 2, just as I said, we switch 11 p.m. to 10 p.m. and 11:30 to 10:30. And that's according to the memorandum of understanding that they proposed for the events that they plan on having. You know, there's some talk in there about who knows what might come down the way. But they can always come back to,
I would accept that as a condition if we added to that, unless the event is in progress.
well, that's the 10:30.
Before 10, okay.
That's the 10:30.
Yeah, darn.
For
Thank you.
overtime?
Might I suggest to the board that setting a condition requiring the lighting memorandum to be adhered to would satisfy Selectman Dawson's concern? Okay.
No, because after you go through the planned events, there are those unplanned events that might come up that are at 11 o'clock. I don't think that we should leave the door open for these lights to be on as late as 11:30 for whatever the Tilton School may schedule there beyond football games.
Their lighting memorandum, if I'm reading it correctly, states, well, the latest time it says is 11 p.m. actually.
Thank you.
Does that work?
No, I want the latest time to be 10, or for the overtime football game to be 10:30.
Why would we ask?
That's just me.
All right, yes, Mr. Jordan.
I do have a comment about this. I own a duplex on the corner. I have tenants. At the time, I have a tenant, as a son who's 15 months, 16 months. Lights at that time of the night. Whether she remains a tenant there, or I have other tenants in the future, I would like to have at least the respect to have the lights off before that time. You know, by 10 o'clock, so that if I do have residents that want, you know, that have little kids, that they can put in the bed at a certain time, we don't have to worry about lights and noise.
Can I respond to both questions or comments? I think it's always been the intent of the school to not get ourselves in a situation where we are have adversarial relations with our neighbors. And I think we have tried to uphold that piece throughout the history of the school. I do think that having the lights not on past 11 p.m. is something that would happen incredibly rarely. Having a lighted athletic field will allow us to have opponents which we would not necessarily be able to compete with in a scenario by having them on to 11 p.m. The reason why I put in the 11 p.m. piece is because I honestly don't have a regular use in mind before, you know, it's an event going past 10 p.m. I just don't know what this facility will allow us to do in terms of school life. It is an athletic field, but if I have a winter carnival, which has been a historical event, and I could do a snow sculpture contest on one night till 11 o'clock, that's a great tradition of the school. And I would propose that we continue to work within the lighting memorandum that we have, which we had discussions with the neighbors about a proposal, and then if there's a problem, I'm very happy for someone to call me up and say, hey, listen, the lights were on to 11 o'clock, that really put me over the edge. You know, we can adjust in those pieces. This document was created with a lot of input, and I'd like to stick to that document. As far as Mr. Jones's comments, yeah, absolutely, I'm a parent, you know, getting kids to bed early is really important. In the last meeting that we had, Mr. Jones suggested that we plant some trees bordering the property. We agreed to do that piece to help mitigate the use and the view of the property. I said at that meeting we'd be glad to do that. I think the distance from the lights and the proposed trees will mitigate that issue as well.
But now or within 10 years?
Well, I think if you look at the lighting dispersal piece, it's probably 400 feet, maybe 300 feet away.
300 feet, roughly.
And according to light dispersal, the impact is incredibly low, and we agreed to plant trees along this property as well.
Very good.
Yeah, in the last meeting you said, how about planting some trees there? And I said, sure. So I think the minutes reflect that.
If we were to put in the 10 o'clock deadline, there are exemptions. If you read 2.4.6 under G, well, other special situations approved by the governing body, which is the selectmen, for temporary or periodic events, e.g. rodeos, revivals, fairs, festivities, carnivals, nighttime construction, which would be an ice, whatever.
Exactly.
Those would be permitted if you in fact went to the Board of Selectmen and requested that. So that would not be an issue here.
If I have a
there were
rodeo?
a certain, pardon?
If I have a rodeo?
Our revival.
That's
It was more than revival I was concerned about. That
Okay.
music might travel all the way up to where I live on School Street.
May I ask a question? And I'm going to ask Selectman Dawson this question. Not exactly about the lighting till 11:30 at night, but if you have a game at 10 o'clock and it gets out at 11 o'clock because it's into overtime, are we now into another ordinance with games leaving and it might be in the finals and it's the champions and everybody's yelling and screaming and hollering, and that poor baby that Mr. Jones has as a tenant is now not able to sleep because of the noise level?
Hence the reasons I'd like the lights off, no later than 10 o'clock
And
at
I think
night.
that's her
Which
point.
means that would be scheduling, because you have to remember when the game is over, there must be some kind of pickup that has to be done to the field. You just don't walk away. So that would have to be figured into the scheduling.
When you have this
of it.
whole entourage coming from the field to the school,
But
and
if
then
the
you have the
lights-
visitors, whoever their opponents
Right.
are,
But if the lights have to be off by 10,
and then the party
then
at Mr. Jones'
scheduling, you'd
house.
have to have enough time to pick up whatever you need to pick up after a football game. I don't know, I don't do sports like that. So the event itself would have to end before 10 to allow for that, if the lights are going off at 10:30. I mean at 10 o'clock. So in essence, I would expect those visitors or people that came to view this event would be leaving between 9:30.
I was actually going to bring up the noise. It's just kind of been in my mind for a while. I know that we're talking about lights, but as long as the lights are on, the noise is gonna be there. And the yelling coaches and the whistles from the referees. So I'm actually kind of in favor of the earlier time for the lights to be off.
All right, then I'll make a motion to accept the site plan as revised with the one condition.
Well, I was gonna talk about other conditions.
All right,
Where they specifically, and I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. That was for the latest event, but I was just curious what the other planning board members felt about putting some kind of restriction during the week on the Monday and Wednesday night events. Because
On the
the
which events?
memorandum of understanding is, this is our best wish, this is our plan. But if we put just simply a condition that says the latest they can be on is at 10, then they could schedule games on Monday night and Wednesday night until 10. But their memorandum draft indicates that the practices would be on Monday, Tuesday. And you have practices on Friday and play on Friday.
We
Well,
don't.
it's in the fall. I don't understand football, so you have to bear with me. But, do you understand my train of thought?
Well,
I'm thinking that-
the lighting
I mean,
memorandum.
during the
I don't
week.
understand,
Well, I think during the week on Monday night, do you really want a game here until 10 o'clock at night?
Actually, the restrictions say 7:30 on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday.
It says practice and not game.
Right. And if you
Oh.
have practice,
I can change,
So for
Monday,
the
Monday,
condition-
Tuesday, and Thursday, I can change that to be practices / games,
so,
if you'd like.
Okay, till 7:30 only?
Yeah,
so for during the week, what I'm saying is there should be some restriction that doesn't allow them to have practices late at night, or games, or events, ice sculptures or whatever. But we have to remember, it is a residential neighborhood.
I believe that's what the intent of Tilton's draft MOU is stating, that
Yeah, I thought so. It's-
they're essentially restricting their use during the week
to 7:30.
to 7:30,
7:30.
Monday, Tuesday, and
Thursday.
The memorandum of
Not
understanding
Wednesday.
is not the conditions of this vote.
I understand.
We're not voting on the memorandum of understanding.
well, that's part of the site plan, so we're,
So we'd have to accept it as conditions of this.
sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, if one of the conditions said to adhere to the MOU that was submitted, yeah. But now, maybe to adhere to the MOU as amended during the meeting, as submitted and amended during the meeting.
Thank you, Darius.
And that is to 7:30?
Well, as Darius said, if that's what the rest of you think we should do, I just wanted input from you what you were thinking.
It says Wednesdays at 9.
This Wednesday's out. Game plan.
We play games on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and that's why it was increased to 9 p.m. on Wednesdays. The likelihood of that happening, of having a night game on Wednesday going to 9 o'clock is small. Study hall begins at 8 p.m.
What time does a typical evening game occur, start time?
We've never had them before.
Have you played at other places that have them? What time?
Typically, it's a 7 p.m. It's a 7 p.m. start.
So, assuming that a game would take 2 hours, you'd be done by 9, say a soccer game or even a football game.
Absolutely.
You'll be done by 9, probably off the field, clean up by 9:30.
Yep.
All right, does the public have any more to say? So I'm gonna close it to the public and just deal with the planning board. No? All right. So we'll accept the revised site plan with number one condition that all lighting will be off, or the games will be ended by 9 p.m.?
No, we said 10 p.m.
No, the latest the lights would be on would be at 10 o'clock. So basically, I think winter is where they're saying these lights would not be on past 11. So if we change that to 10,
Okay.
and then we added a condition that at no time will the lights be allowed to be on past 10.
Unless
Well, but
permission is
Exemption.
gotten,
Yeah.
unless the governing body
Mm-hmm.
gives an exemption. Grants
well, that's for
exemption.
special events we're talking about.
Well, yes, but that needs to be in the conditions, I would think, to ensure that they can, in fact,
Well, we'd have to
use
take
that.
off the summer and non-Tilton use. The special events. Where's the special, is that the special events?
what are you talking about, this Tilton non-summer use? I'm reading from I'm reading not from
I thought we were
that,
amending
I'm
the
reading from the exemptions,
notification. Yeah, this is it.
okay? I'm reading from the exemptions in our zoning ordinance.
I thought we were amending the memorandum of use there. I thought we were amending that at this time, and then adding a condition.
Yes, but if they do that, that follows the guidelines listed above.
If-
So it would be 10.
Except for the winter, they have.
Except for the winter. These lights would not be on past 11 o'clock.
Yeah, if I may, I think the lighting memorandum draft, if I hear correctly, everything within the fall board is in agreement with how that reads.
Right.
Basically, lights may be on until
Yeah.
7:30 for practices, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Yeah,
Wednesday night may occasionally have a game we can add / practice,
Right,
but lights would be off by 9 p.m. on Wednesdays.
right.
Friday and Saturday night games possible, but lights would be off by 10 p.m.
yes.
And then underneath that, winter.
I think if we modify that last line to read these lights would not be on past 10
Yeah.
p.m.
Thank you.
Yeah, I
Okay.
thought that's what we'd already done.
I didn't know we'd gone past the memorandum of understanding.
Oh, okay.
And then the bottom one, notification of neighbors,
In town.
that would have to,
We added in.
we'd
And
have to, and
we-
then have to adhere to, G and zoning.
Yes,
Those
but we
are-
added and governing
Right.
body. That's exemption from the governing body, that's what we'd already added.
Well, we just have to add to that, that they would have to abide by, that provision in our zoning, where before.
Governing body,
And then 2.4.
all right, governing body as detailed in the zoning ordinance. 2.4.6 exemptions, number G. Is that okay?
Mhm.
Can I ask a point of clarification?
Mm-hmm.
I think everything that's been suggested is absolutely fine. I just want to clarify, I believe my understanding is that if I'm in an overtime situation at 10 p.m., I can go to 10:30 without being arrested.
You can
Yes.
finish the game without being
I
arrested.
can finish the game without being arrested, okay. Thank you. I just,
Well, except the strictest adherence to this, we didn't have that in there. Which is why I suggested adding that, condition to it. Unless you can come up with verbiage for these lights would not be on past 11:30. And then add the,
Where's the
I think earlier we talked about page 19, letter K, number 2, changing that to 10 and 10:30.
well, you could add the verbiage in this right after. These lights would not be on past 11 p.m. Where does it say? that in here, I've read it 1,000 times.
K2.
Should be scheduled under those circumstances, playing quarter except to conclude the scheduled event that was in progress before 11 p.m. I would add that language to it. Right after where it says, in winter, the lights would not be on past 11 o'clock.
Past 10 p.m.,
I'm
okay,
sorry.
and give me the next
10
sentence.
p.m., except to conclude a scheduled event that was in progress before 10 p.m. and circumstances prevented conclusion by 10 p.m.
Okay, I'm just gonna put C, zoning. Are you getting all this, Dari?
Well, I am, but I think, you know, in order to have something that we can all leave, knowing that we're leaving on the same page,
Yeah.
I'm trying to come up with ways to sort of bring it into this draft. I mean, the first change that everyone's agreed on is changing the 11 o'clock to 10 p.m. in the winter.
Yeah.
So that covers
Except to
that.
conclude,
But,
okay.
but that's overall, that I think that applies to everything, right? And maybe a final line, a final heading saying something extenuating circumstances in the event that specific, you know,
The game is in progress.
I would use the exact
Event and
language in the
conclusion.
ordinance
Okay.
under,
Yeah.
on page 19,
All right.
K2.
so should I start writing that as extenuating circumstances as the last heading?
Well, no, we had it under the area of notification of neighbors
Okay.
and town of Tilton, okay?
So how about, should we change that to notification of neighbors and town?
Yeah.
There may be some situations where the school needs to require a use outside these guidelines. If such an event is planned, neighbors and the town will be notified via email as soon as possible in advance of the event. And then how about adding a sentence, any such circumstance must receive prior approval from the code enforcement officer or from the
No,
select
No,
board?
no, governing body,
Governing
the
body.
selectmen.
Okay,
by
oftentimes,
ordinance.
sorry, the select board likes to designate an agent, and it might be helpful if we name that agent so the school knows who to
The
talk to,
zoning
but
board,
if they just
sure.
need to call all 5 select board members, that's fine. And so any such circumstance must receive prior approval from the governing body.
As detailed in zoning ordinance
2.4.6,
0.6.
note G.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the last thing, well, do you feel that that covers the 10:30? Okay, so another thing needs to be added to get the 10:30. All right.
I would just add,
If they're already in.
on page 19, I would add, under K, I would add 2, except change those times accordingly, because it really specifically.
We're not changing the zoning ordinance,
No,
right?
no.
No, we're using the language in it.
Okay.
This way, if the game is still in progress.
2.4.45 gives us the authority to put further restrictions on these ordinances. That's what we're doing. So if you use the language in 2, it's very well put out there. It explains it very well, that if a game is in progress at 10 o'clock, it's been scheduled, it's in progress, they're in, what is that called? Extra time?
Overtime.
Overtime,
Something
then
that-
they can continue until 10:30.
Well, that's
Okay,
what I
so-
was trying to do before somebody named
Sorry.
Dari interrupted me, because I was putting it under winter.
Okay.
Under these lights would not be on past 10 o'clock,
Okay.
except to, and that's when I added what Catherine just gave us. And then I had C zoning,
Except to conclude a
except to
scheduled
conclude a
event
scheduled event,
that was in
yeah,
progress.
that was in progress, that part of the zoning.
How does, okay, the only thing about that is how does that prohibit them from starting a game at 9:59 p.m.? Which I don't expect they would do, but
It
that, I
doesn't.
guess,
But they better get it done by
By
10:30,
10:30.
okay.
the lights are going out.
But if it's in progress,
Then the lights
But
are
there's still a
It only allows them
restriction.
to go until 10:30.
10:30.
There's still a restriction for only an extra.
10:30.
Okay.
It only gives them half an hour to get her done.
We're not gonna start a game at 9:30.
I know, I just,
Just saying.
He does that all the time too, it's like a test.
He's just trying to get back at me for telling me he interrupted me, Peter.
Will you be having games during the week?
Huh? I
yeah,
know.
yeah,
Not during the winter.
Right.
But Wednesday nights,
In the fall?
yeah, Wednesday nights, the lights would be off by 9 PM on Wednesdays.
Okay.
And I
But
assume,
I guess my question is, if you have a game on Wednesday night in the fall and overtime occurs, do we get an extension until 9:30? I guess it gets a little.
that's a good question.
I know, I'm not trying to confuse
Can I just
it.
say,
It's all
can I just-
scheduling.
Can I
I'm
just say
just saying,
something? At
the
this
way the
point in
bylaw-
time, you've had your chance. It's now back to the planning board,
Okay.
and we're putting our conditions forth. Okay, so please, let's just restrict it to the planning board. Now, do you have everything that you need?
yes.
Okay, you want to read that back to us now?
Okay, accept the revised site plan, and so far the condition is adherence to the revised, just now, MOU, lighting memorandum.
To include, and then maybe give us what we changed. How do you want me to read that?
To include, under the winter heading, these lights would not be on past 11 is changed to 10 PM. And then, except to conclude a scheduled event, and so on as mentioned in zoning. And then the last heading, notification of neighbors, will be expanded to say notification of neighbors and town. There may be some situations where the school needs to require use outside the guidelines, and such event is planned, neighbors and town, that was added, will be notified via email as soon as possible, in advance of the event. Any such
use of the lights would
Any
require
such-
permission from the
Yeah.
selectmen.
Must receive prior approval from the governing body as detailed in zoning 2.4.6 note G.
All right?
And that gives them the.
Can I propose one more condition, and, because I was at the zoning board meeting, thank you. I know you're getting sick of me.
I'll get back tomorrow morning.
One thing that came up at the zoning board meeting was that these lights come with a 25-year warranty, and at the company's expense, any variation, anything that strays from what was proposed on their candlefoot lighting schematic can be fixed at no charge, but regardless of the guarantee from the company, maybe a condition that requires that these candlefoot proposed, these
The new ones.
proposed lighting levels
The
be
new ones
adhered
today.
to.
Okay.
Well,
The latest.
as amended, let's say,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
And then the only other thing would be, there was discussion again at the zoning board meeting about setting some conditions on the trees. And the only reason I'm saying not the zoning board is dictating what the planning board should do, but just so that the planning board is aware that that was something that the zoning board viewed as something that the planning board could address.
Well, we did address the trees.
Okay.
I just don't think the
Satisfied
trees
with
are
that.
really a factor at this point.
No, I don't think they are either.
In the lights, because it's gonna take generations for them to reach a level where they're gonna be effective.
And what was
Deciduous
proposed.
trees do lose their leaves in the fall, so they would be.
But keep in mind, those trees are also
It
in the
does
city
have a new
on
date, so
on the
we
wall.
use this one,
So
date
they are,
that, the other one.
they're gonna be,
dated
they may be
July
10-foot trees, but they may really be a
Yeah.
15 to 20-foot tree because of the height that they're sitting on the wall.
Yeah, but there's still a 70-foot light above them. But anyway.
Yeah,
Personally,
But that-
I
but that
don't,
light-
think-
That's 70
personally, I
feet
don't
from
think
the
the trees
field
are a
level.
factor.
I don't think the trees are a factor either, although I do think that it's a good idea to add the condition of adherence to the engineered design of July 14, concerning the lumens, the illumination somewhere. All right, and that, are we happy with that?
Mhm.
All right, that's the motion. All in favor? Is there a second? I need a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right. Go that way.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, we don't usually have a planning board meeting after a zoning board meeting, but we call this meeting special so that you guys can go on and work your magic.
Thank you.
Okay?
That's actually the neighbors concerning the parking and the speed. So.
Thank God we have this better.
Yeah, that's always bad.
A little more lucrative.
Yeah, and that has some.
We'll see.
No, I'm kidding, but, yeah, I check with
Did again.
All in favor?
So to record the speed of all the cars.
Now you go.
You know, stood up the sewer commissioners, are they still up there?
No, they don't want to talk to you. They don't like you. They told me they don't like you.
And they said they've never had it.
I don't know.
They
said it's starting, I have no idea.
Wednesday is going to be the heaviest day, and the general average speed is about 25 miles an hour.
Oh, it's been 12 minutes ago, he texted me, I think you guys are still
Yeah.
We've
upstairs.
been down there with
So that's good data because there's something needs to be done
That's
on
fine.
the road.
You gotta go to sleep now?
Thank you very much. See you Thursday. Thank you. Do you want help taking stuff out?
Does it have a dog?
Just fine.
Yeah, so, I think,
I want to thank everybody for showing up tonight.
You got one?
She's my bride. Now